I have all of the perfect squares written up there. So like 1 squared, 2 squared, 3 squared. If you can write them down. The better you know these, the easier this is. But I mean, obviously you have a calculator, so you can use it to your advantage. We're going to do difference of squares first. You have one section of this in delta, and then we're going to do factoring trinomials, and that is all. So for difference of squares, you've got 2 of these, and the only time this works is when you have a perfect square as the number. And so being able to identify those perfect squares is important. But you have a variable that's squared and then a perfect square as the number. And it's being subtracted as well. And so what's going to happen is you're going to take the square root of each term, so both terms, and then it's going to turn into this. So I'll just kind of show you. You're going to take the square root of each one of these, the square root of x squared and the square root of 36, and the square root of x squared is just x, and you do x plus the square root of that, so 6, and then x minus 6. So the square root of this is x. The square root of 36 is 6. And so that's what ends up happening, and this is what you type in Delta Math. So like for this one, the square root of this is y, and the square root of 49 is 7. So it becomes y plus 7 and y minus 7. All right, and then for this one, it's slightly more complicated. You have the square root of 4x squared, which just becomes 2x. All right, because the square root of 4 is 2, the square root of x squared is x, and then it is plus 1, and then 2x minus 1. Okay, and then this last one, the square root of 9 is 3, so 3x plus, and then square root of 100 is 10, and 3x minus 10. Oh, there we go. Yeah, so you're just taking the square root of the first one and putting it in this first blank, and then the square root of the minus, or of the second one, putting in the second blank, and then the second part of this looks like the exact same, except you just have a minus sign in the middle. All right, and then that's all you have to do. That's how you do this. All right, so that is the first section. So the section that is called difference of squares in delta. That's the one I just added today. I might even move it up here. The one difference of perfect squares, that's how you solve those. And we're going to do these two. These are the X game, and it's really just pretty quick. And that will help you practice to factor trinomials. Alright. So let's look down here, show you what the X game means. Okay, what the X game does is you are trying to find numbers that multiply to equal this and add to this. So multiply to this and add to that. So multiply to positive 8, add to positive 9. And so that's why it looks like this. So there's a couple sections on delta that look just like this, where you have x, or you have 8, and then there's a little multiplication symbol. You have 9, there's a little addition symbol because you're trying to multiply to 8, add to 9. And you pick the two numbers that will multiply to 8 and add to 9. So the factors of 8 are the things, like this one's pretty easy, but to figure out this, I did not mean to do that. You've got to know the factors of 8. So like 1 times 8 is 8, 2 times 4 is 8. And then you just take those two factors and you add them together and you figure out which one adds up to 9. 2 plus 4 is 6, so that would not add to 9, but 8 plus 1 is 9. So these are two numbers that multiply to 8 and add to 9. So pretty simple, and that's what the X game is. So when you get to delta, that's how you do the X game. And then that leads us into factoring trinomials, and this is factoring trinomials where this value, so the coefficient or the number in front of these three are called A, B, and C. You'll see this? A is in front of x squared, B is in front of x, and then C is just over here. So we got A, B, C. We need two numbers that multiply to equal -10 and add to equal 3. So I'm going to take -10, I'm going to make this little T chart, and then I'm just going to start with, okay, so 1 and 10 multiply to 10. 2 and 5 multiply to 3. Oh, 3 does not go evenly into 10, so we're not going to write it. So yeah, it's going to be this one. It's going to be the 2 and the 5. But here's the deal. If you add 2 and 5, you're going to get 7. But it's a -10, so you've got to figure out which one of these numbers is going to be a negative. And there's a really easy way to figure that out. I'll show you. So if you see how 3 is positive, you need the bigger number to be positive. If we want it to end up being a positive number, you need the bigger number to be positive. So we're going to put the negative symbol on that smaller number. So -2 times 5 is -10. -2 plus 5 is a +3. So the way we write this and how this is going to be written on delta is you just write x. Remember, you take the square root of this first one. So x minus 2, x plus 5. And that's how you solve that. All right, and then this second part right here, you start with your little T chart on that last number because you want to multiply to equal that. Multiply. I cannot write multiply to this, add to this. So -18. So 1 times 18 is 18, 2 times 9 is 18, 3 times 6 is 18. So I'm just going like 1, 2, and 3. What are the factors of this? All right. So 1 and 18, there's no way to add them together. Also, this is a +3, so the smaller number needs to be negative. If it was a negative number, then we'd put the minus sign on the bigger number, but we want it to be positive. So -2 and 9 is 7. -1 and 18 is 17, so that's not 3. -3 plus 6, oh, that is 3, so that works out. So x minus 3, x plus 6, because this is a -3 and a +6, and that breaks this apart and factors it into x minus 3 and x plus 6. All right, I'm gonna pause for a second, and I'm gonna give you guys a second to figure out these factors. So what we're doing, I'm gonna take -60, and you're gonna just start 1 and 60, 2, 3, 4, 5, and figure out what all these factors are. And the way you can do that, I mean, you just take well, there's a few ways. You can type it in over and over again, 60 divided by 1, 60 divided by 2. Or you could just do y equals 60 divided by x and go to that table, and it gives you all of those things. Like, you can't see it on the screen, but it gives you all of those factors for that table. All right, I'm going to pause and give you a chance to figure these out, figure out which one we're going to use. Okay, so I took all these from my table, and then, like, why do we have negative signs on the first one? Well, they have to one of them has to be negative, because it needs to end up being a -60. But we want it to end up being a +4, so, like, the bigger number has to be a positive number. So you add all these together and figure out which one adds up to 4. And you gotta go all the way down here to -6 and 10. So x minus 6, x plus 10, and that's all you gotta do.